Hello everyone, welcome to DJSCE Cell podcast season 2. My name is Yash Badani, I'm the chairperson of DJSCE Cell and I'm your host for the day. Today I welcome Mr. Mikhil Innani. He is the managing director and the CEO of Apollo Finvest and he is the co-founder of PharmEasy and he is also an alumnus of our college. So I welcome you Mr. Mikhil and please can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. So a little background about myself to add to what you said, right? So, like you rightly said, I complete my education here. Very proud of that. And after that, I went for my master's to CMU. And for the last 15 odd years, I've been building digital companies in India. So I started off my career in a relatively unknown company, in a tiny company called Coupon Dunia. I was heading product there. I was there for like a couple of years or so. The company got acquired by Times Internet. Then I went on, like you said, to co-found PharmEasy. Had a fantastic journey there. In fact, one of the co-founders was also an alumni from DJ. Once we raised our Series B round of about 200 odd million, that's where I got an opportunity to exit. So I took that. Then I went on to join Hotstar. This is when Hotstar was very, very young. It had like seven odd people in the product and tech team, and our entire tech was outsourced to Accenture. So my job there really was to build out the entire team, take the tech in-house, build it from scratch. And we went from 7 million monthly active users to about 350 million monthly actives, which was almost like 70-80% of the smartphone market back then in India. So that was really fun. The company obviously got acquired by Disney. And today, like you said, I'm the MD CEO at Apollo. Apollo Finvest is an NBFC. We are a digital lender. What we do is basically, provide digital loans to a variety of customers, whether they are retail loans or merchant loans. And we're also listed on the Bombay Stock Exchange, right? So that's a little bit about me.
Okay. So how does it feel coming back to the college, seeing, in the same walls? Have you been here in this room, or did you see the classrooms?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say a lot has changed for the better. I mean, I think this is way, way, way more fancier, right? In our time, I was telling just somebody when I was coming up that the canteen, it doesn't look anything like our canteen. Our canteen looked like a go down. I had to be very honest, right? This one looks super fancy. I think in general, the college has got a massive upgrade, right? And obviously, it's very, very nostalgic to come back, to any place where you have so many fond memories, so many amazing friendships that we've been, I got fortunate enough to make. So it's very, very cool to come back to your school. Always is.
Yeah. What were the best and the worst experiences in the college? Yeah.
I think, I would say the best experiences were always probably, just hanging out with my friends, right? That's what I think of. Uh, I don't know, I should say this or not, but it's probably just copying assignments. Basically, one person would do the homework or, assignment, and I think the entire class would be sitting here and copying from that, one person's work, right? And very honestly, copying in exams. Again, I don't know whether I should say this, but that's how I passed a lot of these exams. I'm not proud of it, but like that's how it was. I yet remember the person who I copied from. So if Ankit Jain ever hears this, thanks for making me pass. Right? Like he used to be left-handed and I used to be right-handed, so the angle was perfect. But yeah, I mean, all those are really fond memories, right? At the same point in time, I think I had a great time even doing my. I think the best probably thing I can think of in college was my final year assignment, because that's when actually I got to build something really cool. Back then, we had built a predictor for metal prices, right? So things like gold, silver, different golds, commodity prices basically. So we'd actually use real world data and some degree of machine learning and analytics to actually do that, and added sentiment analysis to that as well. So that was really cool. I think probably the worst memories would be that I don't know, once I was drawing a picture of a teacher which was not so aesthetically pleasing for them, and they ended up catching me. So yeah, that's something which obviously led to a lot of ruckus, right? I think the obviously the teacher wasn't very too happy about that, and I got a big firing. But yeah, like these are just some memories that I have of college.
Yeah. So Well, presently we actually make our ChatGPT do all the work for the assignments. Yeah. So there is not a one person, but a ChatGPT for everyone.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about how you met the co-founders of PharmEasy and what was the process then.
Yeah, I mean, so what happened really there was that, before PharmEasy, I was, like I said, I was heading product at Coupon Dunia, right? And at that point in time, one of the alumni of DJ, and he also was my roommate back in CMU, Hardik Detia, he actually was building a distribution company in the pharma space. And even obviously, like I said, right, I knew him from CMU. Funnily enough, we didn't interact too much during DJ, right? Uh, but I was always, bugging him during my time at Coupon Dunia that, why don't you guys build something which is consumer facing? You guys have sorted distribution and supply chain, which is a big part of the pie, right? And he used to always jokingly tell me that, why don't you do it, essentially, right? And then when the company got acquired, Coupon Dunia got acquired by Times Internet. It was at another CMU friend's, a cocktail party basically when one too many drinks down, and then that's when he took this conversation very seriously that what are you planning to do next? I know this has happened. Why don't you explore this? And that's when it all started basically, right? Like where we once we were back in Bombay, it was just in parallel to whatever we were doing, at basically at my house in the night, it became like a hackathon, essentially, right? Where I remember like employee number 345 from Coupon Dunia joined us, and they literally used to stay at my house at that point in time, much to my mom's, despise, because every day she used to wake up at 5 o'clock to do her puja, and her hall used to be occupied by like five, six boys who've not had a bath for I don't know how many days, and it's just a big mess. But that was really fun because that's how it all got started, essentially, right? And we came up with a very, very quick and dirty prototype, and we launched it into the market because we weren't even sure, right? Like, is there a market for people to, call for medicines online? Because there were a lot of skepticism, right? Because if you're unwell, you'll typically just go and immediately get the medicine. You're not going to wait like 1, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, or even 1, 2 days at that point in time for a medicine to come. But that's when we realized post launch that there is clearly a massive market, especially for people who have high blood pressure, diabetes, chronic illnesses in general, where they're spending like 4, 5 grand a month on medicines. I think for them, saving 15, 20% was a massive number. And we found like a very clear target market there.
Okay. So you said that you went from DJ to CMU, then you again came back to India.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why you came back to India? Like, did you want to always start a business of your own? What was your motivation to come back to India?
Yeah, so to me, back then, I think there were two very big motivation factors, right? I think number one for me was very honestly, um, I would say family, right? Because, my mom's basically like a single parent. My dad passed away when I was really, really young. So I had this thing that, I want to come back and, stay with her and, take care of her as well. So that was really my mindset going to CMU as well, that, I'm not going to be there forever. I have to kind of come back. And the second big thing was definitely, right? Like, I think in CMU, I was very, very lucky because, the kind of people which were there in the room, we were friends with like, I think in a batch of like 100 odd people, there were about some 30 people from India itself. And I would say like we had a very close knit group of 14, 15 people. They were all like phenomenal and they yet are, essentially, right? Like some of the smartest people I've ever met, so motivated. I mean, when I went to CMU, I think I would probably be like bottom out of that 15. Like that's how I would think. But I think one of the things which is very true is you become the average of the people that you hang out with. So that was so inspiring, right? Everybody there was like, wanting to build their own next company. And I always had that thing that I want to do it, but there's one thing between wanting something and actually putting in the effort. But there, after seeing the amount of effort you have to put to do things and seeing people around me do that, it just became like, nothing seemed like challenging. Just like, yeah, like वो भी कर रहा है तो उसमें कौन सी बड़ी बात है, right? So that's basically what changed the game for me. So like, if you want to do something of your own, I think India is the place to be, just because of visa reasons, etc., right? Like this is the only place where you can do whatever. And I think at the same point in time, I always remember thinking that, the opportunities which are there here, right, are insane, because that's a very mature market in the US, right? In India, today also, right, there is so many things which are unbuilt, basically, right? We can look around us and we can find inefficiencies everywhere. So such a massive target audience here to build for. And I always feel like, even today, if I have to look back, right, I feel like technology is the ultimate equalizer. And if there's one place where we need equalization, it's India, right? It brings the cost down in everything. So that's like the reason why I came back.
So, you sound like a very techie person right now, but you moved on to a management role from a startup to, let's say, to Hotstar. So, a shift between from the, startup environment to corporate and, from the tech to management role. What was that like?
I think I would just say that I go where the tech goes. Right? Like I love technology. That's like my single biggest driver every day. I do that even in my pastime. Like, if in my pastime, you'll probably see me watching videos about, I don't know, some, what are the top 10 things you can do with Chat GPT to increase your productivity, things like that. Like, I'll probably be automating stuff on my Mac, or, playing around with my iPhone. Like, all of those things I've been doing forever. So I don't think too much about like myself as a manager. Like, my job as a manager, I think in simple words is, I try and be, I'm a very hands-off manager, and I like people who are self-motivated. Because like, my thinking always in life is that you're not doing this for me, you're not doing this for the company, you're doing this for yourself. Finally, what you're doing is going to be there on your resume. You should be proud of it. If you're not, and this is not what's inspiring you, you should do something else, right? Because finally, I believe like people are excellent in doing whatever you know they're meant to do. It's like the analogy I always use is that if you make Sachin play football, right, he's not going to be great, right? But because he played cricket, he's like the best ever, essentially, right? So I think that's how I think about every human being, right? Like, my job as a manager is to put you in a position where you'll thrive, figure out what you're good at, and put you in that position and make you like excel, essentially, right? And everybody has a superpower. I think that's where you have to understand people, right? Like, what are they really good at, and put them in that position to thrive. Every time I'm not able to make that happen, it's not really the opposite person's fault, it's my fault, because I am not able to figure out what are their strengths. I'm not able to give them a position inside the company or a project inside the company where they can find that authentic true self of them, right? That's the big thing. So I don't think of myself overly as a manager. It's not like I'm going to come up with like 10 processes that you have to follow, this, do this, do this. It's more about, can you put people in a place, in their natural habitat, basically, right? If you put them in their natural habitat, they will flourish.
Yeah. So once Hotstar got acquired, you started to look for new things, like I guess, and then you found Apollo Finvest. So
Yeah.
like, tell me about why your transition from pharmaceutical, then to entertainment, then to again finance. So how was that?
Yeah. I get this question quite a lot, but to be very honest, it wasn't too complicated. Like, again, like, I just follow the technology, right? Like, so as an example, even when I went to PharmEasy, right, I didn't think too much about, oh, I'm going to get into pharmaceuticals, because we were just looking at problems in that space and figuring out how can technology come in and make stuff 100x more efficient, right? That's how you get 15-20% margins out, when you eliminate people, right? Basically from the operations, and usually people add inefficiencies. That's how it works, because there'll be some politics, there'll be some inefficiencies. People are lazy, people make mistakes, all kind of crazy things happen, right? So I think, how can you relentlessly automate and be very, very efficient, right? Like, that's how I think about technology everywhere. Even when I think about Hotstar, what basically it did is it replaced TV, right? Essentially, we had the content already. All we needed to do is figure out an efficient way to stream it all across, the world, pretty much, and handle the scale, essentially, right? We knew there was product market fit because people were watching this stuff on TV. Now, if people want to watch it in the bus, in the train, in the car, there is no TV. It just can't transport everywhere. TVs are items which are usually utilized by, 4 or 5 people in average India, right? But mobile phones were being utilized by pretty much everybody has their own. So, that was the insight, right? And the exciting part for me over there was, how do you build something which is massively scalable, right? Because I'll give you an example. Like, when we literally stream a live video match, right? Like, back then we actually broke the Guinness World Record. when we had the India-Pakistan live streaming match, right? And we had like, now though it always, crosses this on a regular basis, but back then, this is like I'm saying almost, yeah, 9, 10 years ago at this point in time. So we're talking in 2017, 18. This is when like we had a live streaming match of India Pakistan and we had crossed 10 million, live users on a video stream. This was like breaking the Guinness World Record, and we had to manage our infrastructure so well, because if we didn't, the entire internet of India would go down, right? That's the amount of bandwidth this takes, right? So these kind of things are so exciting, right? Like these are unique problems. Now nobody else can give you these problems. And obviously, after that, getting into a place like Apollo, right? Again, the thinking was, you know, um, financial services in India, right? I feel has always been looked at very, very differently, right? It's been like in many ways, I think startups get this, thing pointed towards them that people always just copy ideas from US and just bring it to India, right? I think in many ways, if I have to be very blunt about it, I think financial services in India are like that. They pretty much serve just 10% of India, and 90% of India is left to fend on their own, right? So that now completely changed because of few things, right? Number one was obviously Geo. I saw the benefit firsthand at Hotstar. Second was obviously Aadhaar and eKYC, right? All of that became available online. And third was UPI, right? It basically set money free, where the transaction cost of exchanging money became free, which is like unbelievable, right? Because what that does is it unlocks transactions which you can do at very, very low prices. Like before, as an example, if I had to do a 5,000 rupee loan, there's a reason why if you go to HDFC today, this is an exercise which actually everybody here should do. If you have like 10, 20,000 rupees in your bank account, hypothetically, right? Go and ask them for a 5,000 rupee loan, right? Technically, it's like a no risk for them, right? Like you have 20,000 in your bank account right now, 5,000, it's like a free money for them. They'll not give you the loan, because the cost of processing the loan for them is so high that the math doesn't make sense for them to give you the loan, right? And that has now completely changed thanks to technology, because now for us to process the loan, it's like a 10 rupee cost, basically, right? For them, it's almost like 1,000, 2,000 rupees, right? Because of the manpower, the cost of the branch, the paperwork, all of that stuff, right? Which is, all based on technology, which was, I don't know, 20, 30 years old. So whenever there's a paradigm shift, which makes something absolutely new possible, that's what piqued my interest with Apollo Finvest, right? That there's a huge paradigm shift happening. So you can invent experiences which just we couldn't, 10 to 20 years back. So that was really the insight.
Okay, so as you mentioned, during the India-Pakistan, you broke the Guinness World Record. All right, so what the environment was like during the office? Like, was everybody so tense? Was everybody like chill? Let's say that even if the crowd is too much, we will be able to handle it. Like, how was it?
No, no, people were panicking, of course, right? Like, there's no doubt about it, because if we had brought down India's internet, right, the fines would have been unbelievable, right? Like, they are massive, obviously. And at the same point in time, it was exciting as well, because, I mean, I don't know when people are going to experience something ever like this in their life again. At the same point in time, we had people from Google, by the way, in our office, specifically the YouTube team, actually seeing how we are doing this, right? So imagine, like, the company that everybody thinks is legendary is in your office to see what you're doing and learn from you, right? Because not only are we doing this, but we were doing dynamic ads as well, right? Which are personalized ads during the stream. So managing ads for, I don't know, 10, 20 million users, right, which are personalized to them during a live stream, which is already breaking the Guinness World Record. That to YouTube was insane, right? Because when you go to YouTube, and if they're doing a live event, everybody sees the same ad, right? But in our system, actually, it was personalized ad based on what your watch history or your data that we have at Hotstar, right? So it was like a lot of interesting things which were getting executed at that point in time. So it was phenomenal. You just have to enjoy these experiences also.
Yeah, definitely. So, when you started Apollo Finvest, were you the solo founder? Or do you have any other co-founders, and how did you meet them, if any?
Yeah, yeah. So actually, I have a co-founder. She's also an alumni from DJ actually, and she also happens to be my wife right now. So the background really here is that funnily enough, we've been dating since DJ. So she was my senior year. I was in second year. She was in third year. So we've been, I would say college sweethearts ever since. And her background is that, she did her MBA, she's a CFA, she's basically a finance whiz, right? And you can imagine every degree she's done it. Like, I think, I don't know, MBA, CFA, God knows what all, engineering. So everything under the sun she's done. And then, before, obviously, at Apollo, she was at HDFC. So obviously we used to keep talking because we were from two different worlds. One was like my world was full of technology and efficiency and things like that, and her world was seeing how a very large Goliath basically performs and does all of these amazing things that they do. Because obviously HDFC is a legendary company in what they've established over the last 30-40 years. So we used to keep discussing that what next, why can't HDFC tackle the problems that we are doing. And our thought process was very simple, that there's no reason for them to, because they have a target market, and I think that's pretty self-fulfilling for them, and they have a lot of way to go there as well. So I don't think they're going to go headfirst into something like that. um and actually she brought in a lot of the, I would say, practical and I would say subject matter expertise, to put it precisely. And even today, that's the role that she plays here, right? I can talk about business, I can talk about technology all I want, but ultimately it's all grounded in reality by her, because she's the one who basically says that this is what we need to do, and my job really is to take that and try and make it as efficient as possible, right? So if she wants to do something which would typically require a company, say 20, 30, 50 people, my job is to make that happen with one person, right? Because I can just automate everything essentially, right? So that's how this kind of works well together. And I think that's very, very important, right? I think in any company that you do, you must basically have a great yin and yang, right? In any startup, the co-founders, I think it's obviously helpful that if you are friends and you have like some kind of past together where you get along. But I think the biggest thing there is that you must bring two very different things to the table, so that you don't step on each other's toes, right? That's the key insight. It has to truly be yin and yang, right? Two co-founders or how many ever co-founders are there, they must bring different things to the table. Otherwise, there's a lot of clashes which happen, because people think that I also know about that space, right? So then people will want to clash. Everybody's an alpha nowadays. So that becomes an issue, right? But with us, I think, that ends up becoming a little bit more smoother.
Having your wife as the co-founder, does that seem to have a problematic or beneficial for you?
I think in the start it was definitely problematic, because what, and I can literally tell you the story, right? So basically, when we started, see, in any startup, when you start, no, you have to, you are working like a crazy person, basically, right, to make it successful. Because pretty much, I would say the first 3-4 years of a startup are hardcore, right? So that's what it was. And obviously, because we were, I think, I don't know whether we were married. I think, yeah, we were married, obviously, at that point in time. So we used to obviously go on vacations and things like that. And I literally remember this, that, we were at the top of the Eiffel Tower, basically, right? We are on a vacation, and, she's like looking at the view and she's like, this is so beautiful, things like that. And, trying to be all romantic. And I'm like on my phone, I'm like, oh, by the way, what do you want to do of this, right? Because this, partner is messaging me, iska kya karna hai? And that's what she's like, oh my God. Like, so we've had obviously those moments, but I think now, because we've been doing this now, I don't know, for 7-8 years essentially, right? Now it's, I think we have a very, very clear way to kind of balance it. I think we've built out the team as well. The business has matured to a certain point in time where we are used to the ups and downs. We're used to running a startup basically. And we also at the same point in time have gotten very, very used to working with each other, right? Where we are very, very clear as to, what do I look at? What does Diksha look at, as an example, right? So I think all of those things really help. And finally, I think one of the biggest reasons in which now I've become on the opposite side, where I always recommend people do this with, family or with, their better halves, as an example. Because, as life goes on, no, what happens usually in founders is that they all want different things in life, right? And that sometimes can lead to poor situations, right? Because some people may want work life balance, some people may want to become suddenly the main face of the company. A lot of those clashes happen, right? Because people have their own aspirations as well. But that doesn't happen inside family, or it doesn't happen obviously with me and her, because we are going through life exactly together, right? Like today we have a 2.5-year-old daughter. So we know, as an example, Like if one of us has to go to her school or do something, it's completely smooth, and we know it's all like, we're doing this for each other, as an example, right? I don't know if I had another co-founder, who would require this kind of flexibility. I don't know if I would be okay with that. I don't know if they would be okay with giving me this kind of flexibility, right? Because it becomes that question mark, like, are you taking this to, are you like, can I trust you now? Because you have another thing which is obviously super important to you. So all of those things, right? And that's how, the reality is a lot of people don't think of these things. But I can tell you one thing, that if your company works, it's not going to work for like to the level that, you want it to, unless you work on it at least 10-15 years. Because, we have this thing inside Apollo as well, that, for us, we will judge whether this company is successful or not on our 10th year anniversary, basically, right? Because if you do well for 10 years continuously, no, that is statistically significant data, essentially, right? It's very easy to do well for 3-4 years, right? Because a lot of things can happen, right? In the middle there was like free money available because of 0% interest, COVID, a lot of those things, right? So it can make, your numbers look beautiful, essentially, right? But 10 years, no, you've gone through 2-3 cycles, and it's very unlikely if you succeed over 10 years that it's fake, basically, right? This is real. So that's how it is.
Okay, so your website describes you as the AWS for loans. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we are pretty unique in that way, where, although we are a digital lender, we don't have an app or a website of our own, right? We are a platform, and what that means is any other company which has an app or a website of any kinds, right? It can be an e-commerce company, it can be a food delivery company, it can be a cab company, it can be a payment gateway, whatever, right? If they have an audience, right? Maybe they have retail customers or they have merchants and they want to lend to them, right? And they have some proprietary data about them. They can actually integrate with me, right? And I'm the NBFC, I have the license, I have the capital, and obviously I have my own algorithms. I'll use their data along with my own custom algorithms to decide whether I want to lend to that customer or not, right? Um, so this is our customer acquisition strategy, right? Where we are not like a Bajaj or an HDFC, which you see apps, branches everywhere, right? Our methodology really is that we are like AWS in that way, right? We are just a platform. We allow anybody with a, who can come to us, can plug and play, integrate with us, and we then decide if we want to lend to those customers or not. And if we do decide to lend to those customers, we lend to them, right? Using our own proprietary data as well as, our partners' proprietary data. That's the differentiator between, what Apollo does versus, I would say, pretty much all other lenders out there. So we're very technology heavy in that way.
Okay, so you have mentioned that Apollo Finvest is a publicly listed company. So what's the difference in running a publicly listed company and a startup? Like, what do you think is the main difference that happens together?
I think running both companies have differences in the sense that, like, see, I'll tell you, like, ultimately, I feel like if I have to be very blunt about it, and I would say that I don't think there's any difference. I think both companies you need to be running for the long term. But in practicality, that doesn't happen, right? Because usually when a company is, VC funded, they will try to get growth at all costs because they feel like that's what will unlock their next round of funding, and that's what you optimize for. And in a public listed company, usually what ends up happening is that you optimize for the next quarter, right? You always want your next quarter to be nice so that your share price is positive and things like that. For me, I don't really think any of these things. Like, I really don't care what my next quarter is. I probably don't remember what my numbers are. My thinking is that, I don't even care what my stock price is because we are optimizing for 10 years, essentially, right? Like, for me, over the next 10 years, I want to be very, very, very successful. And I'll always optimize for the long term, right? I don't really care about the short term. If my profits are like, X percentage, Y percentage down, I don't really care, because the reality is in this, in Apollo, we are listed, but like we have majority stake, right? Like 71% stake in the company is by the promoters, and that's, by design. Because I've done other companies which, we had a lot of investors. We raised, literally like billions of dollars at that point in time, and uh, the biggest realization I ended up having is that, you lose control of the company, because suddenly you don't become, you're not the majority shareholder, so it doesn't really matter even if you're the founder. If the opposite person tells you what to do, you do it. Otherwise, they genuinely do fire you, right? Because if they have more stake, they're technically actually the owner. So you don't want to be in that situation. You always want to be in the driver's seat. It's your baby. You should really build a company with a lot of care, attention, and build it for the long term. Because I can tell you, if you find a successful company and ever happen to come across one, or if you're in one, even as an employee or as a co-founder, right? Hold on to it with your dear life, right? Because once it's a once in a lifetime thing. I've got very, very lucky. I thank my stars every day that I got a PharmEasy and I've got an Apollo. But this one I'm going to make it count. So that's really the thinking.
Okay, so when you hire people, what do you think about that? Like, how do you hire people? Like, Mark Zuckerberg always says that if he's hiring someone, then he would hire them if only if he would report to them. So, do you have something like that, or what do you look for?
Yeah, to me, I just look for deep passion, right? I look for anybody who can show me in anything in their life they are deeply passionate. And what I mean by deeply passionate is, suppose somebody comes and tells me I'm deeply passionate about movies. I'll keep asking them questions about movies, right? Obviously, I'll have a general IQ test, right? Which is what I would do for everybody, because I need the person to have 7 on or 8 on 10 IQ, right? On just basic stuff. But like, to me, like, the X factor that I look for is people who are deeply passionate about any one thing in their life, right? It could be health, it could be sports, it could be whatever, like it could be TV shows. Do choose, whatever it is, but I'll really probe you deep in that, right? Because I want to see that in this world which is full of social media and information is just readily available, and people just do headline level research. Can you go deep into any one subject, right? And if you can, then I know that you have those genes within you, that you're deeply passionate about one thing. If you're deeply passionate about one thing, then I think it's something I can do, that I can make you deeply passionate about what I do. Because I think I'm a very good salesman, right? So if I talk about something, I think I can get you interested in it because I'm deeply passionate about it, and I think that's infectious. But who I cannot change, right, is a person who is just blah about everything, right? Like, they just read up about everything, they just know appropriate about everything, and they themselves have not found anything that they're passionate about, right? Because the only way that happens is if you don't invest too much time into figuring out where you should go, right? Like, you've not put in enough time. And that is something which is, I find very, very, like, it's an allergic reaction I have, that in today's world where so many interesting things happen, you don't have anything that you're deeply interested about. That means, kuch to galat hai. That's
Yeah.
the thing.
Okay, so many of our college students are often struggling with how to reach the ideation for a startup, and if you have an idea, then how to execute it. So, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think when it comes to an idea, no, I think always you guys should think about basically something which solves a problem which you yourself have seen. And like, so I would break it up into two parts, right? Like, one is, if I had to target, there's very different answers for a person who's experienced and for a person who's a fresher. If I had to target a person who's just in college and tell them, how do you think about an idea? I would tell them that find anything which is inefficient. It could be literally inside your college, right? How are you submitting college assignments? How are they being corrected, right? Is there a manual person sitting and correcting papers? Is there some way you can automate it, right? Can you use OCR, right, to figure out who's copying from who? Lot of things you can do, right? So all of these are problem statements, and you can build anything. Because see, when you are very, very young, no, especially you're a fresher, I think I would put more emphasis on building a habit to build, not necessarily building a whole company, right? Because see, that comes with experience, right? Like, that's when you'll know what is the difference between a product and a company, because there's a big difference, right? Like, sometimes you'll build a cool product, but that's not necessarily a company, right? A company is something which you feel you can build on top of it, can have many, many different things, and then it will be creating more and more and more and more value for your users, and you can attract more and more users. But sometimes it's okay to build something standalone, right? You can build something standalone. Like, as an example, it could be something as simple as building an app which basically takes all of the you know answers that you guys are writing for your exams, does an OCR on top of it, uses ChatGPT to do corrections, and gives you the marks automatically, right? That's a standalone app, basically, right? Maybe that's not a company, essentially, right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, I think there are different ways to think about it, but I think the first thing which you guys should think about is getting into the habit of building a team and building something. Practice building, right? And building till the end result. Because every time you think of an idea, no, you will go through that, this path where ideation is very easy, actually. The difficulty is when building that and executing that and getting it adopted, right? Like, as an example, if you build something like I'm saying, the challenge is not only building that but also getting it adopted inside your college, because that is where sales come in, right? You'll have to sell this software, you'll have to prove it works, your teachers have to buy that this is working properly and really convince, right? So you've done few things: you've ideated, you've built, you've sold, right? So you should do this iteration many times for anything, right? It doesn't even have to be, frankly, software, right? You can sell anything, right? Even, I was telling somebody offline before, even setting up a pani puri stall, it's great experience, because you'll come to know where you should place it, right? You'll come to know what to price it. You'll come to know how to compete with other pani puri walas around. It's all practical experience. How do you run a business? It doesn't matter what you run. Once you get into the habit of starting to think like this, no, it's very useful for when you have a real idea which you feel, okay, this is a company, right? And that's how it goes. And sometimes you can't even come to know this at the start, because you may have an idea, and then what will happen, that when you have an idea, you may think this is just a product, right? But then you may realize there are so many users for it. Because imagine that idea which I told you, maybe this college adopts it. Listening that DJ has adopted it, maybe Thaduman adopts it, maybe VJT adopts it, maybe like this, it just keeps on going across the world, right? And that becomes a company. So you don't know sometimes the difference between a product and a company. But the main thing I would tell you is get in a habit of building anything.
Yeah, definitely. So, you are a two-time founder. What are the main differences which you feel that the first-time founders are the mistakes which the first-time founder make in general as
I
compared to?
think in general, I would say probably is that they do two wrong things. One is uh, spend too much time in building and unnecessary features, and too much time in perfecting the product, right? I think this is this phenomenon, I call it the Apple phenomenon, because most of us have seen presentations of Apple and we always think this is magical, right? Like, they always give you this perfect end result which is beautiful. Now we all feel this is how product should be launched, so we do that, right? Like, and we feel like when we launch, all users are going to start using it, and just because I built it, it's like, the next best thing to slice bread. But the reality is, what ends up happening is that uh, you don't have to overbuild. You have to build something actually very small, like just one USP it needs to have. Like, in simple words, whenever you build something, no, it should have probably one feature. Because you can build apps which can have 20 features, but actually the reason by which you use the app, no, is probably one reason, right? The reason why you use WhatsApp is because you can chat with your friends. If it didn't have groups, it didn't have any of these things, you yet adopted it back then. So I would tell you, urge you guys to always think about all the products that you use today and research the history of those companies, right? Research the history of WhatsApp, Instagram, all of these companies. How did they start? What was their very first product? And then make a timeline. You will be surprised at how basic their first app was, right? It focused on exactly one thing. And once they realized that that one thing is interesting, no, when they got so many users shouting and screaming, then they built everything else, keeping those users in mind, talking to them, understanding कि अभी मेरे users को क्या चाहिए next, right? So the biggest thing I would tell you is the mistake that people make usually is that they overbuild, because they think कि यार नहीं, 10 ये तो फीचर होना ही चाहिए, राइट? ये तो फीचर होना ही चाहिए, इसके बिना कंप्लीट नहीं होगा, इसके बिना ये एक फीचर में ऐड कर दूंगा ना, तो देन आई गेट माय यूजर्स. बट इट्स नेवर दिस वे. It's usually one feature and one feature alone which clicks with your users, and that's when you get a massive spike in user base. And then you realize what to build next by talking to your users. right? So that's the biggest thing.
Okay, so talking about you, what is the next milestone which you would like to accomplish?
I think my personal biggest things right now are like, I would literally put it in this way, right? I have two children right now, right? One is Apollo and one is, Zoe, right? So she's my daughter, and Apollo is obviously my older child at this point in time. So to me, I feel like I have a personal target that by the time I'm 45, I want to make sure that both of these, children of mine are in very, very good shape. So the older child, Apollo, I wanted to be in a situation where it's reached a place where I feel like it can largely run on autopilot, right? I wanted to be having a great team, right, which I've built over a period of time, which is very, very capable of running it very smoothly and taking it to new heights, right? Because I also feel at that point in time, by the time I'm 45, I would want to invest a lot of my time with my child, because by then she would probably be 12, and I feel like 10 to 20 is like very, very you know very, very important years. And I just want to be very, very active as a parent with her, because like my biggest job with her, I think, is going to be getting her to love to learn new things, right? Like I feel like the virus which I was infected with, and I see a lot of people being infected with, is they hate books, right? Because we are always taught that books is something you read, and then I'll cross examine you on it. So you have to buy heart it, right? So I was just telling somebody offline as well here that it's like, because of this, no, people have a very you know adversarial relationship with books, right? Books are not like that, right? It's like almost like me making you watch all the Avenger movies and then asking you tell by heart all the dialogues which Tony Stark has said. If I make all children do that, they'll stop watching Marvel movies, right? Because they'll be like bakwas, right? Like I have to buy heart all this is horrible. So that's the problem which is there, today in society, right? That we treat books in such a rubbish way that we made them the enemy. What it should be is that, you should see sometimes, I don't know if any of you guys have nieces or any young children in your family, you should see them when you get them, storybooks. When you get them storybooks, they are dancing, and I'm talking about like 3, 4 year old kids, right? Or 2 year old kids also. They are so happy. There's like a new storybook, they'll constantly be after you, read this for me, read this for me. It's like they love it, right? And that joy, is very important to retain at all costs. Because in the future, at least to me, what I see is that, with AI, I think what you think is going to be what gets implemented in a matter of minutes, right? I don't see like their situation being. I think in the future the most important attribute will be what what you think, because you and me would be able to do exactly whatever it is that we thought of. You just tell AI and they'll do it. They'll build it. They'll build an app. They'll build an website. I think things are going to get built like this. You think it and it's done. So the differentiator is going to be, what do you think, and after it is built, how do you execute, right? These are going to be the two differentiators. So to me, my biggest priority is going to be, at least with my child, is to make sure her thinking is on point, right? And the only way you can make your thinking great is if you have knowledge, right? And you love education, right? Basically, you actively buy books, you read books. And it's not necessarily about like another big problem is there that people are forced to read about every subject. I think ऐसा नहीं होता. I think most children, by the time they're 14, 15, they've kind of realized what they like and don't like. So I think the secret power is to double down on what they like and उनको वही feed कर, basically, right? And it's okay, they can have basic knowledge about other things, but it's important that once you realize ना कि मुझे ये बहुत interest है and I'm very passionate about it, feed that fire, right? And just get them to be like, you know, just don't let that passion stop, right? And that's the thing, like that's how I think about, at least for main important things for me.
Okay. Do you have any suggestions for the books, first time founders or freshers of a college, maybe?
I think I would break this up into 2 points, right? Like the biggest suggestion I have about books is that, you know, don't think of books as textbooks, right? Like I'll tell you how I read. I buy any book that I like. Like any book, I'll literally go into a bookstore and whatever looks attractive, I'll not even do like too much research on it. I'll just pick up the book, I'll start reading it, and I'll read from anywhere inside the book. I don't start in the start. I'll look at the index, whatever chapter looks interesting, now the most interesting, I'll read that first, right? And if it doesn't seem interesting, I stop reading. Because what I have discovered is that the problem is in the way we read books. When you read a book, no, you start from the start. And sometimes, no, what happens is by the time half the book is over, you start feeling a book boring. Because same चीज ही बोल रहा है, कुछ नया information है ही नहीं, but you're like, this your this school mentality is that कि book तो खत्म करनी है. And that's what kills your habit of reading. Because this is boring, right? It's like the video game theory. Video games, the way best video games are made, no, is that they have an advancing level of difficulty and they have always new features which keep unlocking, which keep you interested right in the end. तो इसलिए वीडियो गेम लोग खत्म करते हैं, मजा आता है, बोर नहीं होते हो तुम, right? Even if you get bored, you start the next video game, so you don't get bored of video games. The problem with books is that some of the books are just not great, right? But we are in this mentality कि textbook पूरी खत्म करनी है, right? Chapter पूरा पूरा portion खत्म करना है. So वो wrong mentality है, right? Read it like a magazine, right? Where you just see what article you're interested in, you see what chapters you're interested in, read that, go to the next book, right? The trick is to not stop reading and read every day, right? And read only what you like, right? I tell people, even read comic books, it doesn't matter. You just need to get into the habit of reading, because there are two concepts of reading, right? One is there is non-fiction and there's fiction, right? The trick is to only read what you like. Maybe you start with fiction because that'll get you interested in reading. But then when you go to non-fiction also, now you should read about who are the people you're interested about, right? Like who is the person that you're interested about.
So me personally, I would like to be like someone. There's this Arnav Gupta. I think he was from Geo, product manager at Geo. Saw his podcast once. I was really inspired by how he handled things at Geo. And other than that, I would personally like to. I would personally want to find a tech company. I want to do something of my own in the tech field.
So
So
who's like some famous person that you're interested in?
some famous ones. I've read the autobiography of not the autobiography, the biography of Elon Musk. It was really nice. And yeah, mainly other than that, I've even read the biography of Malala Yousafzai. I generally read biographies.
So that's what you should do. Yeah. Figure out people that you're interested in, no, and find their autobiographies and read about them. If you get interested in somebody, read about their autobiography, right? Don't go of what I say. That was my first advice. Like if you ask other people for book suggestions, no, my fear in giving them sometimes is that if I give you one and you don't like it, then you will get off books, right? But since you've asked me the question, I will give you some suggestions as well. See, one of the books I really like is, especially if you're an entrepreneur, is Zero to One. That's a super book, right? Like I think it's
That's
the
the book
Bible.
I'm reading currently, actually.
Yeah, so it's fabulous, right? I would just, that book should be a Bible, right? That's fantastic. Then I would say, the second one I really like is Shoe Dog, right? That's the autobiography of Nike founder. So fabulous book. I would say, like, the next book is I don't know if you've read A to Z. It's the Amazon story, basically, right? Again, a fabulous book. So many books are there, right? I can think of, Hard Thing About Hard Things, right? Anderson Horowitz. Super book. Again, very, very entertaining. I think so. To me as well, like the way I try to read is that, I try to find people I'm interested about, right? Obviously, like I've read Steve Jobs' biography, I've read Elon, all of those usual suspects, right? Which, are very inspiring. Every autobiography possible, I try to read everything essentially, right? Because I think to me, I just find it inspiring. So that's how I think.
Okay, Michael, it was great to meet you. And I'm sure our watchers will be also very satisfied with this podcast. And thank you so much for coming here. And signing off from DJSCE Cell. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks.